Hello, and it's Mr. Burns for the Weather Studio doing your second spring update. So if you watched the first spring update, we did the top 20 warmest autumns because we actually had the third warmest autumn on record last year in the UK, and we had a look back at the analogues, and we saw that we had a look at the those autumns that followed the top 20, the springs, that followed the top 20 warmest autumns. Reason why we're doing these spring updates is that Gav isn't doing them this year. He's taking a break from long-range forecasting. I thought, why don't I do the videos instead? I've done videos for Gav in the past before, so I thought, why not this time? So not many people watched that video. I'm a bit disappointed, but what can I do? Hopefully do a few more videos, maybe get a few more people interested. So, anyway, last time we looked at warm autumns. This time we're going to look at the December CET. We're going to look at December temperature and precipitation in this episode. So, December central England temperature came out between 6.4 Celsius. It was quite a mild December this year. Excuse me, itchy nose. So we're going to look, quite simply, we're going to look at December CETs between 6.2 and 6.6. Now, with this analysis that I'm looking at, it's the NCEP. When Gav does these long-range updates, analog updates, he looks at the NOAA analysis, but I can't. It's a very complicated website, and I haven't been able to find that, to get onto that. So I've had to use the NCEP/NCARI analysis, but that only goes back to 1948. So I've had to exclude a few years, including 1821, 1862, 1863, 1910, 1911, 1921. I've had to take out those years because they're not too early for the NCAR analysis, which goes from January 1948 to the present day, which is a bit of a shame, but it does make things easy for me, because then we can just look at years post 1948 or post 1950 like Gav does anyway, and of course it's more relevant to our climate, so those old years probably before 1950 are probably not that relevant to our climate anyway, so it helps me. So we've got the years we've got with December CT is between 6.2 and 6.6. We've got post 1948, we've got 1971, 1985, 1986, 1994, 2006 and 2013. And we're going to look at the springs that followed those years. So our first December with a CET between 6.2 and 6.6. CET just stands for Central England Temperature, by the way. It's the longest running temperature series in the UK. It's basically daytime and nighttime temperatures taken over the course of a month across 3 weather stations in England, and they basically add all the day and night temperatures and divide them by 2, and you get like the average temperature. So it's the longest running temperature series on Earth, going back to like the 1700s or maybe even the 1600s or something like that. It goes back hundreds of years anyway. So just a quick drink of water. So let's get on with it. So our first December is 1971 for CET between 6.2 and 6.6. The corresponding spring is the spring of 1972. I just need to get up my Epic Pen software, so I'll do that. I forgot to launch that, so just bear with me. Okay, Pen software loaded up. Let's get back onto the video. So the spring of 1972 looks like an unsettled spring. We've got low pressure over and to the south of the country. We've got high pressure to the north. By the way, blue and purple colours extrapolate to low pressure below average heights, and the green orange and red colours extrapolate to high pressure or above average heights. Also got high pressure in the middle of the Atlantic, so that looks like quite a cold and wet spring to start us off in 1972. Next December for CET between 6.2 and 6.6 is December of 1985. The following spring looks like this. Another unsettled spring with low pressure over and just to the northwest of the country. Looks like high pressure around Scandinavia, and winds coming down from like a northwesterly to northerly direction a lot of the time. So that looks like another cold and unsettled spring for 1986. Next December's December of 1986. The following spring is the spring of 1987. This one looking a bit more dry, a bit more anticyclonic with high pressure over into the west of the country. Winds low pressure over like Central Europe. Winds probably coming down from a northerly direction though a lot of the time. So probably quite a cool spring, but that one is definitely a drier spring. And what we've seen so far. Next December is the December of 1994. The following spring is the spring of 1995. So this December has low pressure over to the north and northeast of the country, high pressure pulled out to the west. Winds, excuse me, wouldn't be a live stream without a cough, as Gavs often says. And winds in from like a northwesterly direction. Again, looks probably a cool and quite unsettled spring for the spring of 1995. I think this spring was quite cold in March of 1995, following on from the cold winter of 1995, and then it does get a lot warmer in May of 1995. Next December, with CET between 6.2 and 6.6, is the December 2006. So I had quite a mild December 2006. Following spring is the spring of 2007, with high pressure wedging up from the Azores through the UK. Low pressure pushed off to the north, jet stream off to the north. That doesn't tell you the whole story though, because it was very warm and dry in April, quite, I think, record-breakingly. So it might have been beaten, but I think it was like the warmest and driest April on record back in 2007. Exceptional month, and then it completely flipped in May of 2007. And May 2007 was a very wet and very cool month. So, and of course, we went into that deluge summer of 2007, which was absolutely atrocious. One of the worst summers for a very long time. And finally we have the December 2013, which is the last time we had a December CET between 6.2 and 6.6 before this year, 2021 anyway. The following spring was the spring of 2014, with high pressure over and to the east of the country, low pressure to the west and the north, so jet stream going off to the north like that. It's a mainly warm and dry spring for the spring of 2014. Putting it all together, this is how it looks. We've got 1972, 1986, 1987, 1995, 2007 and 2014. We've got low pressure around Greenland and Iceland, high pressure around the Azores, high pressure like to the northeast of Europe, low pressure down in the Med. Quite a complicated pattern, but overall bringing in probably quite a westerly flow. So it just looks like a westerly signal. Bounce of wind blowing from off the Atlantic at times, but also the Azores high exerting an influence at times as well, bringing in wedges. So quite a mixed and probably quite a mild signal. Probably quite mixed and quite mild overall with a lot of those springs. I'm going to pause the video there. You get yourself a cup of tea or a couple of biscuits or whatever, and we'll be back after the break to look at December precipitation data. See you then. Okay, we're back, and we're ready to resume part 2 of this second spring update. So let's carry on with it, and this time we're going to look at precipitation data. So precipitation means anything that falls out of the sky, so it could be rain, hail, sleet or snow. This December just gone, December 2021, had precipitation of 106 millimetres. We're looking at England and Wales precipitation, by the way, which goes back a very long way. And so we're looking at quite a narrow range between 96 and 160 millimetres. Therefore, there are quite a lot of Decembers. We're only looking at December's post 1948, because that's the farthest we can go back with this NCEP/NCORV analysis. And it's a good job we did, because we'd have to exclude those earlier years anyway, because there's way too many years to include. You can only fit up to 20 years. Okay. You can only fit up to 20 years data on this years on the reanalysis charts. So if we included years before 1949, we'll be able to do it. So looking at Decembers with a precipitation between 96 and 160 millimetres post 1948, and it just happens to be 20 years, just enough. So looking at the springs after those Decembers, as we did in the first update. So this first spring we're looking at is a spring of 1949. This spring has it's probably going to run slowly, isn't it? Because I have a lot of programs open, well, quite a few programs open and quite a few tabs open. Hopefully it doesn't crash out on me now. It's going to run slow, isn't it? But basically we've got high pressure out over and to the west of the country, low pressure to the north. Oh, there we go. I'm going to draw it in. Oh, very slowly, but yeah. Low pressure to the north, winds in from the west, so quite a westerly spring, mainly dry though, especially in the south, I would say, with low pressure up to the north like that, and probably quite a mild spring as well for the spring of 1949. Next spring we've got the spring of 1952. This one has high pressure to the north, low pressure out to the west, winds coming in from a northwesterly direction, probably mainly dry, but could be a bit on the cool side. That spring in 1952. 1956 has high pressure just out to the west of the country, low pressure to the south, probably bringing in like an easterly flow. So easterlies in spring will be quite cold in March, but can be quite warm in May. Driest weather with that probably in the north and west of the country, wettest weather probably in the south. Next December, with an England and Wales precipitation between 96 and 160 millimetres, is December 1956. The following spring of 1957 looks like this, with high pressure over to the north of the country, low pressure to the south, winds in from the east, so quite an easterly spring again for 1957. Next we're going to look at the spring of 1959. This one has high pressure over Scandinavia, low pressure out in the Atlantic, winds in from like a northwesterly direction. So it looks like quite a cool spring, probably mainly dry as it Atlantic's blocked off by the high pressure, but probably quite a chilly spring if anything. Of course, this was setting up the extended summer of 1959, which started in the spring of 1959 and carried on until like October 1959. Just months and months of warm, dry and sunny weather. Next up we've got spring of 1962, following December 1961. This spring has high pressure northern blocking around Greenland and Iceland, low pressure over into the south of the country, winds in from north-northeasterly direction. Looks like quite a cold and unsettled spring in 1962. Of course, that was following on from the daddy of cold winters, exceptionally cold winter of 61-62. Gav's done a real analysis video of that, and I think Scott Richards has as well. Exceptionally cold winter, coldest winter since 1740 in the UK, and the spring carries on the pattern of the winter. So often if you get a cold winter, you get a cold spring as well, especially in early spring. That's what we had in 1962, the spring carrying on the pattern of the previous winter. Next spring is the spring of 1965. This one has high pressure over around Greenland and Iceland, low pressure over into the southeast of the country, and winds in from like a northeasterly direction. Looks like quite a cold and unsettled spring of 1965. It was quite a cold decade, of course, the 1960s. Next spring is spring of 1973, following on from the December of 1972. This spring has high pressure to the west, low pressure to the east, winds in from a north-northwesterly direction. Looks quite a many dry but quite a cool or chilly spring in 1973. Next spring is 1978, following on from December 1977. This one has again high pressure to the north, northern blocking, low pressure to the south, winds in from the east. Again, another quite easterly spring, which seems to be a trend. Last time with the temperature analogues we had a trend for westerlies, but now with these set of analogues we seem to have a trend for easterlies. Next up we've got the spring of 1983, which just looks like a cold and wet spring with low pressure slap bang over the top of the country. That just looks like a proper cold, wet spring in 1983. Next spring is 1984, again with that easterly signal, high pressure to the north, low pressure to the south, winds in from that easterly direction. Again, easterlies in March, usually quite cold. Easterlies in May are usually quite warm. Next we've got the spring of 1991, following on from December 1990. This spring has high pressure over to the west of the country, low pressure to the south. Again, quite an easterly spring, mainly dry and anticyclonic, with the high pressure close to the country. Next up we've got the spring of 1998. This one has high pressure to the west, low pressure to the east, winds in from the north. Looks like quite a chilly spring for the spring of 1998. Next up we've got the spring of 1999. This one has low pressure over and just out to the west of the country. Winds probably coming up from a southerly to southwesterly direction, so probably quite a mild but quite unsettled spring in 1999. Also has quite a strong, reasonably strong northern blocking signal as well in 1999. Next up we've got the spring of 2004, following on from December of 2003. This one again, high pressure over and to the north and to the west of the country, low pressure to the south, again pulling in like north easterly winds, so probably quite a chilly spring, but mainly dry for spring of 2004. Next up we've got the spring of 2007. We've been through this one before, so it was exceptionally warm and exceptionally dry in April of 2007, record-breakingly so at the time. Flips in May and we go cold and wet, and that pattern continues throughout the summer until it goes dry again in September, with a very dry autumn in 2007 after the deluge summer. Next up we've got December 2010. This December has Spring 2010, following on from December 2009. This spring has a strong northern blocking signal, winds in from the north, so that's probably carrying on the cold signal from the winter of 09-10, which is a cold winter. It was quite a cold year in 2010. It was quite a chilly spring in 2010, with winds in from a northerly direction a lot of the time. So just waiting now for the next tab to load. Okay, we're not responding, so just need to quickly pause the video. Sorry about this, and I'll be back in a moment. Okay, we're back. So let's go on to the next spring. The next spring, following on from December with precipitation between 96 and 160 millimeters, is December 2011. The following spring, spring 2012, looks like this. So we've got high pressure to the west of the country, ridging through into Central Europe, low pressure around Scandinavia, like that. Quite a anticyclonic spring in 2012. This spring doesn't again, this analogue, like 2007, doesn't tell you the whole story, because it was very warm and dry in March 2012, but in April 2012 it flipped to a cold and wet pattern, and that pattern carried on until the end of May 2012. In the last week of May 2012 it turned very warm and dry before turning extremely wet and unsettled in June 2012, and that pattern carried on through the rest of the summer, and even the rest of the year. Really, it was an unsettled autumn in 2012 and didn't dry out until 2013, really. Also 2007 has cropped up quite a lot in our analogues. It's cropped up 3 times now, so it's cropped up in the warmest autumn's analogues, it's cropped up in the December CET and December precipitation. So we've had a very similar autumn and December combination to 2007. So looks like 2007 is the favourite year at the moment, so we could get a similar pattern to that. Maybe a very warm April, very wet May, and maybe a deluge summer. Who knows? We've not had one since 2012, so we are overdue a really wet summer. But we have had a lot of wet summers in recent years, just not as wet as 2012. But anyway, it's early days yet. We've still got quite a few more updates to go. Next up, we're nearly at the end of this now. This is a big patch of analogues. Just take some getting through. So this one has low pressure to the west. It's the spring of 2018. High pressure to the east. Winds up from a southeasterly direction a lot of the time. So quite a mild spring, but also quite unsettled at times. It's cold in March 2018 with the bees from the east, of course, on the first day of the month. The coldest spring day on record. It's quite mild but unsettled and cloudy in April 2018, and May 2018 is a very warm, dry and sunny month. Of course, we have a very warm, dry and sunny summer in that summer 2018. Finally, we've got spring of 2019 with quite a strong northern blocking signal, and that ridges down into the country like that. So quite a dry anticyclonic spring. It has a mild and wet March in 2019, a warm and dry April in 2019, and a cool and dry May. Overall, quite a mild and dry spring to finish for this set of analogues. Putting it all together then, this is all the years so all of these springs were followed with a December with a precipitation range between 96 and 116 millimeters for England Wales precipitation data. Overall, this shows that we have quite a strong blocking signal, so high pressure to the north, deep low pressure to the south, winds in from the east. So yeah, we have a strong easterly signal with a lot of these springs. Easterlies in March will usually be cold. Easterlies in May will usually be warm. So it's quite funny how the previous set of analogues favoured westerly springs when we looked at temperature, but when we look at precipitation, we clearly follow an easterly pattern. And of course, in easterlies, spring is our most easterly season, so you would expect a lot of springs to be easterly, and indeed a lot of springs are easterly in the UK. Of course, we still get quite a few westerly springs as well, but yeah, we do get a lot of easterly springs in the UK, as that's our most easterly season. Certainly, easterly springs are a lot more common than westerly springs, put it that way. So yeah, that's this week's second spring update done and dusted for you. So yeah, we'll do a few more updates. We've got January, recording this on 2nd of February, so we've got January temperature and precipitation data to look at. It has been an exceptionally dry January, probably the top 20, one of the top 20 driest Januaries, so we'll definitely look at January temperature and precipitation data. We might do a bit of pattern matching as well, maybe. And when February's done, we'll have a look at February's temperature and precipitation data, and then in March we'll have a look at all the years. We'll have a look at which years featured most in the spring analogues. At the moment, 2007 is looking like a top year, and then I'll just put the webcam back up, and then we'll see which years occurred most, and then we'll make a forecast, look at the height anomalies of those years put together, and then we'll make a forecast based on that. We won't just base the forecast on that though, we'll also look at the seasonal long range models as well, see what they're forecasting for the spring. We'll combine that with the analogues, and then I'll do the spring forecast for you guys. So Gav's currently not doing the spring updates, the long range updates, as you know. Hopefully he'll bring them back for this summer. He was doubting even carrying on the long range updates full stop because of how this winter has turned out, but most people, vast majority, wanted him to continue in the comments. So it's getting late now, voice is getting quite weak, so yeah, it's nearly midnight, so I'll need to be signing off soon, but getting really tired now. But yeah, hopefully Gav will get back to doing the long range updates soon. I might also do a summer sneak peek video, but yeah, stay tuned for the next spring update, guys. But for this video, that's all for now, and thank you very, very much for watching. Peace.